Hello viewers from wherever you're watching us from around the world. Welcome to your weekly State of Affairs program here on QTV. I'm your host, Aliou Cisse. And I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Modumboj, stepping in for Mr. CD Cisse. Mr. Mboj, good to have you on the program once again.
I'm glad to be here.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Mboj. Well, viewers, this week our guest is Mr. Bakari Baji, who is the Gambia's Minister of Youth and Sports. And of course, as you have been following developments, he's also the candidate of the National People's Party for the much anticipated mayoral election for Kanifing municipality. Well, as you know, Bakari was appointed as minister in 2020, replacing Hadrami Sidibe, and he was among the ministers who were retained by President Barrow after his re-election in 2021. After which, he appointed a new cabinet. I mean, thank you very much, Honorable, for joining us on this program once again.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cisse and Mr. Mboj, and good evening to the viewers of this program.
Like I said, I mean, this is 2-in-1. We'll be looking at what's been happening at the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and of course, I mean, we'll also delve into politics. I mean, like I said, I mean, you've been selected by the ruling National People's Party to be the candidate in the upcoming mayoral election. But just reflecting back as Minister of Youth and Sports, I mean, how will you describe the journey?
It's been a good journey, good experience, and an honor to be privileged among Gambians to serve the position of Minister of Youth and Sports in the last 2.5 years, or maybe about 2.5 years now. It's been both sides. It's some successes, challenges, failures here and there. But by and large, we are happy to have at least been able to contribute our part towards making the Ministry of Youth and Sports what it is today, and also contributing and doing our part to uplifting the affairs of young people and the sports of this country.
I mean, the Gambia is a youthful population. I mean, a country where people have so much love for sports. I mean, what sort of a Minister of Youth and Sports did you inherit from your predecessor, that is, I mean, Hadrami Sidibe?
Well, it was a ministry that, just like any other ministry, was operating based on what its mandate is to the sector that it is tasked to serve, which is the youth and the sports. It's a ministry also that remains one of the least funded ministries in terms of financing, in terms of ability to deliver its expectations or its mandate. But it's also a ministry that has a huge constituent. If you talk about young people, we know that based on the demographics, we are almost 60% of the population is categorized as young people below the age of 35. And that means also that the responsibility is huge. But again, it's like many will expect, it's a cross-cutting ministry, like many people will call it, because it has almost every facets of our being, living as human beings. That is the area of sports, the area of apprenticeship training, the area of employment, and the area of security. Almost everything, culture, everything that you think of that deals with our normal living has something to do with the ministry. And that also makes the works a little bit challenging. But again, internally, as a ministry, things were happening from its predecessor. And all we did is just to take over from him and continue to work with the team and to build on the successes that he did, and also be able to bring in our own ideas and move the ministry to where it is with all the conditions that exist there in then and now.
You talk about the ministry being among the least funded ministries. I mean, what sort of developments or achievements, because earlier you said, it was, you learned a lot in terms of success and challenges, but let's start with the successes before we discuss the challenges. I mean, what will you describe as some of the key successes that you have registered, I mean, during your term as the minister? You're still the minister though, but I mean, looking at the fact that, you said it is one of the least funded ministries.
No, we register successes. One of them is, and that would be the first one, of course, when I came newly. We had this youth policy that expired in 2018, and we were able to finalize it and take it to cabinet for approval And it took a process, but eventually it was adopted in cabinet in August of 2021. And that is what serves as the blueprint that guides the ministry in our operation. And coming in, I believe that was something that's important, because you cannot be able to work with all these satellite institutions without having a guideline. And the policy is what guides our operation, is what guides the kind of activities we do. It's also what guides our relationship with other ministries and other developmental partners. The second is the strategic plan of the ministry. Again, this wasn't, there was a strategic plan again, but it expired somehow. And we were able to hire a consultant who assisted us working with all the relevant institutions within the ministry to develop a new strategic plan for the ministry. And the strategic plans started last year, 2022 to 2027, which is a 5-year strategic plan. And currently, we are exploring the opportunities to also develop the national sport policy, because again, that sport policy expired some time ago. We couldn't have the funding, but we are lucky that last year, when we were in the Commonwealth Games and the Commonwealth Sport Ministers meeting, we was able to have conversations with the Commonwealth Secretary General, Patricia Scotland, and she granted approval for the Commonwealth to support the Gambia in developing a sports policy. So we are in that process of getting the concept note, and eventually it will be tendered internationally this time around, not locally. Of course, Gambians also can apply to hire a consultant who can develop the sports policy for the country. And the sport policy is not focusing on just sports, but we're focusing it on the new concept of sports for development and peace, which is how do we use sports as a mechanism to develop and also maintain peace within our country. And that's why the consultancy is going to be international, because their countries have already gone ahead in that. So, like I said, Commonwealth is funding that for us through the negotiation that we did. So in terms of policies, those are the things. The law also is the same. We have already reviewed our sports law. In fact, Gambia didn't have any sports law. All we had is an act that establishes a council, which is the Sport Council and the Youth Council. So we have developed a new act, which is called the National Sports Act and the National Youth Act. So these are all important documents that I would consider successes, because guidelines, laws is what regulates everything. And our sports, we know, not that it's loose, but there was no law that was regulating. And the relationship between athletes and associations was difficult. The relationship between the associations and the government also sometimes, we have hitches here and there. But we believe that this act would now be the one that would guide our operations when it is adopted and passed in Parliament and assented to by the President. So
before Mr. Mboj comes in, you talk about, having the national youth policy, you talk about the strategic plan, and for plans are on to develop the national sports policy. Implementation of these policies are always a problem in this country. How much are you confident that it will be implemented?
No, well, I don't think implementation is a problem. It's you always have people that are ready to implement it. I think the problem is the tools that you need to implement it. Sometimes one is about the staff capacity that might be lacking, or you might not have the requisite skill set to be able to deliver. The other aspect is the funding gaps, because again, policies are documents. It just guides you as to what you need to do. Now, you need the resources to be able to do that. And it depends on who is providing the funding. At the moment, our youth and sports at the government level is fully funded by government. We do not have private sector that is investing in the sports sector, neither in the youth sector. We have the UN system that is supporting the youth component, but the sport component is not supported. So these are some of the challenges. But I believe that with what we have put in place, of course, the next phase would be developing the funding strategy in terms of how do we fund our sports. And now it will be the responsibility of the people that would be there, or all of us, to go out there and look for the funds that are going to make it work.
Somewhat, I think.
Yes, I'm just sort of going to follow on a bit from what Alim has just said. Yes, the plans, strategies. This is why I think Paul Kagame called it the crisis of implementation. We're going to go back to that. There's always this issue of implementation, because as you rightly mentioned, resources. That is the problem. So one wonders, during the strategic planning, isn't that put into account, into consideration, given that we don't have resources? So what is achievable, as it were? What do you think about that?
No, we in the plans you do have funding. All what we do, there are two aspects: what an activity or plan project will cost, and secondly, who is going to fund it. So in that column where it says funding, you always put government and donor partners. That's always there. So that's why I said...
And it's all negotiated, all agreed first, isn't it? You agree on whatever funding before you write down the plan. Does it work that way?
No. It's the plan before the funding. It's like you develop the projects, you develop the activities and have them on paper. Then you use that document now to go to your partners and seek for support. Well, first thing, submit it to government to say this is what we want, and then government will find a way of funding it. But of course we know that we have our development partners that we can reach out to support. But you can't go to the development partners to seek for support if you don't have a strategic plan, neither do you have any policy. Those are the first things that they will ask you, apart from the concept note. So that's why it's important that we have this document first and then go to seek for support. Like I said, what we're able to get from the Commonwealth. If we didn't have a policy that talks about a strategy plan, you cannot be able to even convince the Commonwealth to support you. So it's a process, but reality is, like I said, funding is always a problem. But our sector is one of those least considered. Sports around the world is a private-led thing. In the country, in the Gambia, it's unfortunate. Maybe majority of African countries is government-led, and that's where the challenge is. And when government sets priorities, they're looking at other areas: health, agriculture, education, road infrastructure. Those are some of the major priorities of government. But we're hopeful that few years ago, there was an introduction of the levy, the sports levy, that is helping to do some of the activities. Hopefully, we'll be able to have another stream of funding that can be added to the sports levy to be able to make things work. Because right now, I was talking about the achievement. And what I talked about earlier was mostly the internal working tools. But outside the ministry, there is some successes that we registered, including the infrastructural development in terms of the football fields or mini stadiums, like they call them, that have been developed in the north part of the country, in the Fonyis and in Janjambure and in URR. Those are ongoing projects, and one of them is about to start in Serekunda, which is the Serekunda Central, one of the zones that didn't have any standard football field. The funding aspect also, government is now taking up responsibilities when it comes to the national teams in terms of funding the activities of the national teams, and athletics, volleyball, and wrestling, and quite a number of other activities that we are supporting to participate internationally and also develop their internal leagues in the country. So these are all registered successes, but there's always a gap, like I always put. But we're hopeful that with the progress, if we maintain it, we will probably be able to get the other partners to come on board when they see success happening.
Earlier on, you mentioned failures. What would you mention as the failures?
Well, failures would be the delay in the completion of these projects that I mentioned, because those projects were one of the first things that I started when I came in.
But they gone beyond schedule?
Yeah, they did. They went beyond schedule for close to a year now, I must say.
Because most of them were meant to be completed within 6 months.
Yes.
We have Buyam, which was 2020, $7 million. Yes. Janjambure, $9 million awarded to top sport property. We have Labantang, we have Kiang Manduar, we have Kafuta.
Yeah.
All these projects, Honorable Minister, are still not completed.
Yes.
Who will you blame it for?
I'll blame the contractors, because it's purely a contractual issue. It's they were awarded, and then they went on to start the work. And like you said, some of them in December 2020, Buyam, I think, was January of 2021, yeah. And same asked orders. So yeah, they were supposed to last for 6 months, but there was a time that we extended the period because of the country experienced a shortage of cement at one time. And then there was some storm, I think, in 2021, and that meant also that we changed the contract to extend it to allow them to complete. But they should have been completed in December of 2021, and now we're into February of 2023. So the problem is the contractors, like I said, and that's why now we have taken up the initiative of terminating the contracts with those contractors after getting the legal advice from the AG chambers to go ahead with 4 of them to terminate 4 of them, or 3, sorry, 3 of them, because the other ones have already achieved like 91 and 89%.
Like where? Which one of them?
Biam is 91% complete. Biam is almost complete. The only thing left now is just the pitch itself. The how do they call it? Chain link fence of the pitch. But the rooms, the change rooms, the fencing, all of that is completed. And they have done both the interior and the exterior fencing, and only the chain link fence is left. And Sandu also have almost achieved. I think Sandu is where they registered 89%. So the only problem we have is Fulabantang, which is not even progressing, and Janjambure is about 70-something%. Kafuta is also one of the least ones. So the 2 that we, 3 actually, that we, no, 2. So Kafuta, Fulabantang are almost, about 86. And
how about Kiang Manduar?
No, Kiang Manduar is completed.
Okay.
Kiang Manduar is completed. In fact, they were supposed to do their football final in January, which was supposed to be the formal handing over and the launching, but it was postponed. But Kiang Manduar is 100% complete. That's the only one that has achieved that much completion. But again, Kiang Manduar started even before I was appointed. So like I said, the issue with the contractors is because the ministry's responsibility has been done. There was a consultant that was hired, and then the consultant served as the intermediate between us and the contractor. And once they were handed over, they were supposed to do their job and complete the project. Payment-wise, we have done all the payment that we are supposed to do. All the milestones that they reach, we have paid. But failures happen, and they have different reasons that I cannot justify for them. It's up to them to probably defend themselves when the matter appears, when the AE chambers take the matter to court. But like I said, 3 of those ones have gone ahead with determination, and they're now looking at ways to get funding and be able to complete them with a different contractor.
When you are now trying to get another funding, where these contractors not paid their full payment to have these mini stadiums built?
No, contracts, you cannot pay full payment. All you do is you pay based on a milestone. Okay. So if you pay at the initial stage, you pay 45% payment. That's what you do. And then when they reach that milestone, they submit a certificate of completion certified by the consultant, and then you make a second payment. And then when they are almost at the end, you make a third payment. Now the 4th payment is what they call the retainer fee, which is like left there for 6 months after completion to guarantee that the structure is good. So we've made the 1st payment and the 2nd payment, but for some of them we made the 3rd payment. Others we did not. But no, they cannot have been paid 100% unless they complete. Now what the problem is, when you make a 1st payment, they go ahead and do the job. Now some of them, like Fulabantang and Kafuta, they received their 2nd payment and they could not complete that milestone, and that's where the issue is. And you're not able to make any additional payment until they're able to exhaust the funds that you give them. Now, they claim to have exhausted the fund, but the work has not reached where it is supposed to reach in terms of the milestone. That's why their pending payments are not done. So it's not a difficult thing. The only issue is it's a civil case. It's a civil matter. You cannot take them to court. You cannot take them to police. Neither can you arrest them. All you can do is what we did. Write to the Ministry of Justice for the documents there and ask for legal advice, and we were giving a legal advice to terminate some of them based on their milestones. Those are ones that definitely they didn't do much after their 2nd payment, and then go ahead and take the matter to court. So whatever funding was supposed to be paid, the 10% that should be paid before completion, and the remaining 10%, we can use those funds to now get another contractor to move on. But we still have a legally binding contract with some of them, and that's what is affecting us.
What would you say to the...
Let me just proceed this a bit. Maybe here the problem is with the contracts. Presumably there was a tender for these contractors.
Yeah, there was.
So perhaps it was the selection process. Really, that was why afterwards those contractors turned out, well, they breached. Essentially, they breached the contract. So perhaps that was the process, because we've been seeing in many audit reports that many institutions do not follow process in some of these things. Perhaps that was where the problem was with the contract itself. They got the wrong contractors.
Yes, I would. Well, I would not be able to say if they got the wrong contractors, but I know there is a contract committee, and the contract committee sits, and it has a representative from all these relevant institutions, and they make the decisions. Now, how they reach the decisions, I don't know, because like I said, The Kiang one, they've already started before I came. These other mini stadiums or football fields, contracts were awarded even before I was appointed. They didn't have the funding at the time. So when I came in and it was a priority, then we went to look for the funds to be able to get the same people that were awarded contracts in June, about 4 or 5 months before I was appointed, to go ahead and start the job. But they are all construction companies that are registered in the country, and they are certified by all the process, the GPPA, and they're registered with Treasury. And all you can do is, and of course I'm not speaking on behalf of the contract company, I'm just saying from an insider point of view, that all you can do is to assess what they have submitted. Now, they have two things that they look out for: the technical compliance and the financial compatibility. Now, and the first thing is whether it is technically compliant. If a contractor or a construction company is technically compliant, then they look at how much are you charging to do the job. And then they assess, they give points, and then agree. If a contractor is not technically compliant, you're out of it. No matter how much you quote, you're definitely out of the contract, and that's what they do. So from our own belief, the companies were technically, or at least those that were sitting there, the companies were technically compliant, and their financial proposal also was in line with the project based on the submission, and then they awarded them. And again, the awarding is a recommendation. You send it to the GPPA, and the GPPA gives approval to say you can go ahead with this company or don't go ahead with this company. And then it comes. Sometimes it happens in government that you recommend one company and GPPA would say no, review it again. Or you recommend a company and they will say yes, go ahead. And all of those processes were completed before a contract can be signed. And so I would believe that they followed processes. The contractors just happened to fail. And whatever the reason is, like I said, I'm not able to say those things because I don't know. But being a policy person as a minister, I get the briefings, and this is what I can tell.
And now with the new contractors, what is the time frame given to them to ensure these projects are completed?
No, we don't have new contractors yet. Okay. You know, like I said, yeah, with legally we are still binded by the old contracts. The Ministry of Justice would now take up the matter, and you know, then we'll probably be able to take ourselves out of it. But you cannot give a contract, new contract, where there's already a contract. But we are making progress with the two, Biam and Sandu, so that they can complete their works. And then the other ones, the Justice Ministry, the AG chambers will handle that.
And now let's look at the country's only independent stadium, where we understand the government has allocated almost $100 million to ensure the stadium is renovated. This is the only stadium that the country has, you know. It hasn't undergone any major refurbishment since its establishment in the early 80s. I mean, how far have you gone in terms of that renovation work? As we speak, the country cannot host any major football, you know, game in this country as a result of that. Are you disappointed? Or are you embarrassed as a sport minister that your country, despite all the achievements, I mean, qualifying to the AFCON, you know, as we speak, our, you know, girl and boys are prepared to return from, Egypt, having finished second place. Are you embarrassed as sports minister?
That we are not hosting our games here?
Yeah.
No, I am not embarrassed at all. It's an unfortunate situation, and so we feel the unfortunate aspect of it. But embarrassment, no. And there's a reason why, because you're embarrassed at a situation that you created or you enabled or didn't take an action to resolve it. And yes, if that was the case, maybe we would have an embarrassment. But this is not the case. The aspect of the stadium, we are taking steps as a ministry, as a government, to address it. But like you said yourself, this stadium was built in 1984. From 1984, the stadium has not gone any major refurbishment. And this stadium was built at the same time like other stadiums by the Chinese government supporting countries like Guinea and Mali and others. And those who go to those countries will tell you that the stadiums that were built at the same time like Gambian are no longer in use. But ours was the only stadium, and it should have been maintained from that period to now with regular maintenances and all that. But it didn't happen. CAF notified the government of the Gambia through the federation in 2014 that we need to upgrade our football field, our stadium. And it didn't happen in 2014. In 2017, they sent another letter telling countries that CAF was putting embargo on certain stadiums, including our own stadium. There was no action that was taken. 2018, government put in about 5 million or so to refurbish it. But the refurbishment only allowed for a temporal approval. That allowed us to play our matches. In 2020, we were banned again from hosting international matches, and government put in 10 million to refurbish it. And then that's how what enabled us to play our qualifier for the 2021 AFCON. And again, like I said, they just give you a temporal approval and said, go ahead and play a match. After a match, they put the ban back again. So in 2021, we looked at it and said, we can't continue to be putting money, 5 million, 10 million occasionally, to do something that is not going to give us a long-term approval. And we decided to go in for the long-term plan, which is to holistically look at what CAF requires and do refurbishment of that. So we didn't get into just fixing the pitch and fixing numbering stadiums and all that, because this time around, it has always been there. We must change the change room, expand the sizes, put in all the modern equipment in the change room, and we must have the clinic or the medical room, like they call it. The anti-doping room should be there, the CCTV cameras and all the monitoring and security rooms should be there. And there should not be any access between the fans and the players. Everything should be condoned.
It doesn't match modern day football stadiums.
No. So that's why we asked the Minister of Works to do an assessment for us, vis-a-vis what CAF requires and what we have. And that is the assessment that was submitted in March of 2022. And from March of 2022, we were looking for funds, because like I said, refurbishing a stadium to modern standard is a huge cost. And at the time, even when they did the assessment and they said 100 million, that wasn't an actual fact. That was not a correct figure, because the cost of materials with what they have is different, because these are materials that don't even exist. We don't have them in the country. The contractor need to buy them from outside. So that's why when they were submitted, there was no company that would have done it at that cost. So eventually, government again in 2022 didn't have, we as a ministry, did not have $1 million even budget for the whole ministry for the whole year. Our budget was about 80-something million for the whole ministry, So you can imagine, how are you going to refurbish a stadium when your annual budget for the ministry is not even up to what the stadium refurbishment is going to cost? So these are some of the challenges that we encounter internally as a ministry and as a government. But we went ahead, we did a cabinet paper, submitted it, and the president asked the Minister of Finance to look for the funds from outside what we have as a ministry, and that's what was allocated in sometime late last year, I think, 100 million, like you said. But the job is more than that. So what we are doing is to look at what we can do with that 100 million that will give us a stadium that is good enough, and the rest of the work would be completed eventually as we move on. Of course, before the completion of the job, hopefully, government will give some more money, and will. And then, like you said, the procurement process also takes time, because you don't want to just get up and give it to anybody. The tendering was done, and then companies applied for it, and it have to be assessed, and you have to send GPPA. In fact, prior to all of that, to tender it, you need to send the GPPA to approve for tendering. That takes a time. When you tender, you're required to tender for 1 month. And then after the tendering, this time we shortened the period to 2 weeks. After that period of tendering, then you have to choose and give the job, send back to GPA for approval. That administrative procurement process also takes a lot of time. But the good thing is, eventually we were able to sign contract, and the work started in December. I think exactly on the 20th of December. And it's supposed to end by July or June, end of June, according to the contract. And as we speak, if you go into the stadium, there is nothing there. All you see is the structure that is out there. But the inside of it, on both the covered pavilion and the VIP area, is all demolished. All the walls, internal walls, are all demolished. The electrical work, plumbing work, everything that is there is removed. So it's just an empty structure, and they are reconfiguring it or remodeling it to meet the CAF standard by expanding the change rooms and putting all the required tools. And last week I was told by one of the contractors, because we have 2 contractors. One is Jigo Construction, and the other one is CMFT, that is collaborating with Integral Group of Turkey, who has expertise in the area to do the refurbishment. And those 2 companies are doing separate jobs. So as of last week, I was told the 3 containers are here at the ports. I think they're supposed to be cleared, and people will have the opportunity to see how the stadium will look like when it's complete.
We will come back to this topic. Well, viewers, you're reminded you're watching QTV, the Gambia's first private TV station, and we are broadcasting from our studios here on Kairaba Avenue. My name is Ali Sise, and our guest this week is Honorable Bakari Baji, who is the Gambia's Minister of Youth and Sports, and of course, as you are aware, he is also the candidate of the National People's Party for the upcoming mayoral election. We'll go with a short break, and when we return, discussion continues. Do stay tuned.
Espas Motors is the largest and most modern auto service in the Gambia. Espas Motors is the only authorized dealer in Chevy, Mercedes-Benz trucks, Mercedes-Benz buses, Kia, Ford, Futon Mini and Midi buses, Futon trucks. At Espas Motors, we have qualified professionals who use modern technology to diagnose and repair all brands of motor vehicles. Espas Motor services include auto sales, auto repairs, vehicle painting, availability of high-quality spare parts, towing services. We are reachable at any time. Call Espas Motors on 352222 353-4444 or locate us on the Bertel-Harding Highway. Espas Motors.
Welcome back from that short break. You're watching QTV. This is State of Affairs. I'm Ali Sise, and our guest this week is Honorable Bakari Baji, the Gambia's Minister of Youth and Sports, and I'm also joined on the program by Mr. Modumbuch. I mean, Honorable, considering the amount of money being spent on renovating the stadium, one would have suggested, why not we just go in for a whole new stadium?
Yeah, yeah, I hear people say that, and I, to those that I know that I can talk to, I engage them in a conversation so that they understand that the cost of a new stadium is exorbitant. It doesn't mean that we don't want to. We do have the intention to. You see, me as minister and everybody else that is working at the ministry, we would be so proud to say that Gambia got its second stadium during our time. That is what everybody's wish is.
Like they would say Gambia qualified to the AFCON under your time.
Yes, and even the president will be happy that it was during my time after 1984 that we were able to build a new stadium. And we are making efforts to do that. But like I said, refurbishing a stadium, the cost is like you said, it was difficult to even raise 100 million to do what is expected. And that is just minimal. It will probably go way more than that. And even as the work is going on, they are discovering some things that were never captured in the assessment at the first place. Like leakages on top and quite a number of other things that are there. So it's eventually going to be more than what is expected. But a new stadium, the minimum you will need to build a new stadium is about 100 to 120 million US dollars. That is about 61 or so billion dollars, or 6 billion something. I think it's about 6 billion 100 million. Now, do we have that as a ministry? No, we don't.
You don't, but
can government
partners are there?
No, of course we've been approaching partners.
Can support.
All of this time, 2 years that I've been there, we have been doing that. I've engaged the Chinese, the ambassador, the former ambassador of China to the country twice. Had a meeting, and we looked at
that's Ma Jian-chung.
Yeah, okay. And it's been a challenge. Secondly, we've engaged with Turkey, but it's always a problem because they're not going to give. I mean, those times where countries give you things for free is no longer this case because all over the world we all know what is happening with goodies global economies. So sometimes they will have an aid. But the aid is just one fund that they'll give you, and you prioritize what your activities are. So if they give you a fund that is not even up to $100 million, and you need a stadium that costs $100 million, you will spend it on something else. So these are the issues. But we have had the land for the stadium, and we developed a plan for 30,000 capacity stadium. Everything designed and outlined, and everything is in place. And that is the document that we are discussing with these people. But it always comes back to the same issue. You can only look for a partner that can give you a loan to build it. And the loan, you must also look at your debt portfolio as a country at the moment and be able to get into a loan. And like I said, these are not easy to come by issues like people would think. Senegal Stadium, for instance, how much does it cost? It's 230 million euros. That's the cost of the Senegalese stadium.
Built within 2 years.
Yes, but not by the Senegalese government. That's the other thing. Senegalese government alone probably might not even have the funds or will not be able to do that. But they have a company, Suma Group, that had a relation because that's the company that built the airport and built the railway. And they built the stadium as part of it. And the revenue that is being generated from the airport and the railway is what they're using to offset the stadium cost. But these are things that people just talk about comparison, but they don't even understand how it happened. If you go to countries like Morocco, Tunisia and others, the Arab countries, they have the money. They can use their own funds to build it. But there's a reason why there are 23 countries in Africa that do not have a stadium that meets CAF requirement. There's a reason. Because sub-Saharan Africa by nature is struggling with funds, especially for a country like Gambia that doesn't have any natural resources and all that. It's a problem. But like I said, the commitment is there. But the cost of 100 million or 120 million US dollars is what we do not have at the moment. But government is working out internal measures to find a way of getting a loan that can consult us.
You talk about the issue of lack of funds. Earlier on, you talk about the issue of the GSM levy. That was true. How far have you gone as far as the GSM levy is concerned?
No, we're generating revenue from the levy because it's, but again, there are only two companies here at the moment that are active. That is QCell and AfriCell, and those are the ones that are getting. Of course, Gamcell is there, but they have their own struggle. Comium is no longer active. So yes, we're getting
coming back.
Yeah, well, that's what I had. Yeah, no, that's a blessing for us. In fact, if you have more GSM, that's a blessing.
But
for us.
who is responsible for managing these funds? And do you know how much has been raised so far, as far as just GSM levy?
Yeah, we know. We have an estimate of what is raised. The management of it is still at the Ministry of Finance because everything about money, government revenue is at the Ministry of Finance. So they are the ones that receive it and they keep it, and we have our priority projects and we send it to them to say we need funding on this and this and that.
Estimate how much do you think you have raised so far?
From the beginning to now?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I definitely don't know. What I know is that there is an estimated revenue of about 6 million per month.
But why is the National Sports Council not managing these funds? Because I understand according to the National Sports Council Act, such funds should be managed by the National Sports Council. Why is the Ministry of Finance managing these funds?
Well, like I said, all revenues of government are managed by the Ministry of Finance. There is no revenue that comes out that is managed by a private, by an entity, outside Ministry of Finance. Because we have, the Treasury, the Accountant General that manages funds. So everything that comes either goes into the consolidated fund or goes into other accounts that are operated by the ministry. And if you need something, that's where you send it. So National Sport Council is still the recipient of the money. We do not, Minister of Finance does not pay directly to the GFF, for instance, or pay directly to GNOC or to any association. No. If an association has an activity, you write to the Sport Council will discuss with you, and then they send it to us. So we write to the Minister of Finance requesting for the funding. And once the funds are approved and paid, they pay them to the National Sport Council. And it will be the National Sport Council that will now give to the relevant institution that they need to give. So indirectly, they are not managing it, but they are the ones that are the custodian of the fund. So all association issues are there. When it comes to the infrastructure, that is paid directly from the Ministry of Finance. So if you have works that are ongoing, they pay directly from the Ministry of Finance. But NSC is definitely the one that, well, it's now a youth and sports levy, so both NSC but majority of our funding, probably 98% of that levy goes to the Sport Council.
Mr. Mboy, finally, before we get into
quickly,
the...
Yes. In the national budget, you're giving a budget allocation, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you mean that goes to the Ministry of Finance, does it? Or does it come to you?
The national budget.
Yes,
we have a 0.26% of the national budget. That's what we get, and that is at the Ministry of Finance, and they dispose it monthly based on the cash allocation that they give, just like how they give cash allocation to every ministry.
Is it like an oversight role? You have to justify why you're taking whatever. How does it work? Is it to play an oversight role, demanding what you're going to spend it on and all the rest of it to make sure that there's a proper paper trail and
Is that for the levy or for the normal budget?
For the normal budget.
Oh yeah. For our annual monthly allocation is like I said, is a total for the 12 months, and every month you would say, okay, we want to do this month, and then they would, when they do their cash allocation at the beginning of the month, they would send you a letter and said the Ministry of Finance is allocating this much to your ministry and this much to the satellite institutions under the ministry. And then they will remit the funds to those institutions.
And just one more quickly. We've been focusing so much on sports a lot. What about youth? The other aspects of youth, apart from the sports. Employment, for instance, it's very high. Youth unemployment is very high. I mean, I wonder, since you've been the minister, by how much have you increased youth employment, for instance? Do we know?
No, I don't know. What we know is, okay, so the first thing is, employment is actually not under us. Even though we are responsible for youth, no, but employment is not under us. Employment is under the Ministry of Trade. They are responsible for employment. We do collaborate with them by virtue of our responsibility, I mean, our role as a Minister of Youth. But the employment component or the employment portfolio of the government is under the Ministry of Trade. So what we do as a ministry is contribute in terms of skills building, in terms of entrepreneurship development, to assist the young people to have the requisite skills to be employable. And that we do through the National Youth Service Scheme, which is NYSS, that we have put funds to recruit young people annually to go through the orientation, and then they go to an institution of their choosing, GTTI or other institutions of technical training, and government pays for their tuition and their stipend every month. So over the last 2 years, we've had 2 batches. One is the regular program, which is 153 young people, and then we have the apprenticeship training program. And the apprenticeship training program targets those that have not finished high school, and then maybe grade 9 or so, and the regular program is from grade 9 upwards. You know, and like I said, up to more than 300 young people is what we've recruited in the last 2 years, and all of them are now in their institutions of training. The other part is the enterprise fund. In January of 2021, the president launched the Youth Enterprise Fund at the Arch in one of his meetings, and the Youth Enterprise Fund is the one that allocated $20 million to young people who are into business. And the idea is to support young people who are entrepreneurs to be able to develop their businesses, grow their businesses, or set up new businesses. And all of these are also part of the success stories that we register. But by and large, these are the 2 areas: component, skills building, enterprise development, and the National Youth Council focuses more on the advocacy aspect, awareness raising, and all of that too. And they get the support from the UN system, including from government. So there is a good aspect. You're right. We've been talking too much about sports and not youth. But yeah, but there is progress in both ends. But employment is at that level.
Let's now move to something that everyone is talking about at the moment. Bakari Baji is the NPP's candidate for the 28th May mayoral election. I mean, this is not the first time you'll be contesting. You contested in 2018 against the incumbent Talib. And of the 199,957 electorates, we saw only 255 that cast their votes. And of those votes, you got only 5,236 against the incumbent, who got 29,325 votes. I mean, how was the decision reached to have you been selected as the NPP candidate for the election, going by this the figure that you got in 2018 as an independent candidate?
Well, no, the figures, I'm not sure whether the figures would be a good yardstick or benchmark, but and I don't think the figures is what it is used now. The decision came after consultations, because again, I'm serving as Minister of Youth, and but people, of course, knew that I contested, like you just said. And when we were preparing for the elections, people come up with all kinds of ideas, and the conversation started from people that are not partisan. Maybe they are not even into any party, but we know each other, and they think I can be a good mayor, and they tell me about thinking about possibility of running again. Others come from within the party structures themselves, the party membership, the party executive, and over the past months we've been discussing it. It's a yes or no, an issue of either to continue what I am doing at the ministry, or to relinquish that position or come to run for mayor. But in the end, after consultation, I decided to go in for it, and so the rest is history. But there are other applicants also that applied for it, that wanted to run for mayor, and they've been doing their campaign. At the party level, we have our own democratic party processes of selecting candidates. As you see, in some areas, we sit down, negotiate among candidates, and agree to leave it to one person that we think is good enough. Well, not better than the others, but other factors are considered. In other areas, we do primaries, and that's what has happened. And when we did our hours on last week with all the other candidates, except for one, all of them, 6 candidates and myself 7, sat together and agreed that we don't have to go to primaries, but we can do a consensus and agree on who we think is can go ahead, and the rest will support, and that's exactly what happened.
So what makes you think you are the right candidate that you think others don't have, and that can really pose a huge challenge to the incumbent?
Well, one is the fact that I've tested the ground myself. That's an advantage. The rest, there is a former councillor, a former deputy mayor, but he was elected as a councillor. The others are new entrants into the political field. And so it might be a little bit different. But so one, like I said, I've done it in 2018. And with all fairness, even those people that didn't vote for me will still tell you that they knew I was a good candidate, but maybe they voted for their party. And secondly, I am known. I mean, I'm comparing the past. Yeah. I am known. I've been in the council myself from 2008 to 2012 as a nominated councillor, and served as the chairperson of the Finance and Audit Committee of that council during that period. And now I am serving as minister. So it's about advantages. Who probably do you think has an upper edge over the other? But it's not about being better, like I said. I mean, myself and all the other candidates that are chosen, any other person, I believe, could have been a good mayor and would have been able to deliver to the people. But somebody must take the lead. And in this instance, I was the one that people agreed that to take the lead.
So you prefer to be a mayor than be a minister?
Yeah, no, I like both.
No,
I didn't.
no. You are not going to duck this one, minister.
No,
prefer being a mayor to being a minister. Essentially,
yes,
that's what the decision means.
Yes, that would be true. Now, why I said I like both is because I've never been a mayor, but I've been in the council. I know the council. Yeah. I've been a minister, and I can tell both what the advantages and the disadvantages are. My wish has always been to serve. It's not about which position I serve in. But I believe that the mayor is the one that serves as the driver of the vehicle that will deliver whatever is expected of council. And it is the one that has an advantage in terms of generating revenue and spending it on priority areas based on the council approval. As a minister, it's a completely different thing. You operate based on what you're giving. Now, you might have 10 plans, but if the finance ministry gives you one, that's what you can do. In the mayoral, it's a completely different thing. So the ability to deliver is more in the council than in the ministry.
But I have heard former mayor of Banjul, Samba Fall, say that the role is essentially ceremonial. You don't have much powers, really. Much power is with central government. But before we get to that, so when the idea came up, did you suggest that you would run, or others suggested and then ask you?
Others suggested.
But you didn't volunteer. They suggested and then you accepted.
Yeah. Like I said, the proposal.
Exactly. Exactly. And what are your plans, I mean, if elected as mayor of Game?
Okay. I'll answer that. Let me just take a little bit of what Mr. Boyd said about the
quickly,
mayor
because you're running out of time,
being ceremonial. Yeah, you see, the governance system in this country, the people holding those top positions are all the same. The mayor is just like a minister. Because us here as ministers, we don't run the administration, we don't run the accounting system, we don't do anything. Most of it is more of policy and being the vision, the one who drives the vision. And then your people who are the ones, the permanent secretary and others do that. Same thing like council. Mayor is more of coming up with plans, and others or people come with plans and you approve and the administration implement. But ceremonial, I mean, it's the same. Like ministers, you cannot fire, you cannot appoint, you cannot do much. It's the same. But of course, the blame comes to us when failures happen, and we are the ones that get fired and appointed.
Absolutely.
All right. So the plans. You see, for me, it's exactly what a council is supposed to do. A council is a service providing institution, the one that is supposed to be looking at the immediate and important needs of the people of the municipality and working to address it at the local level. And that includes the feeder roads, includes markets, includes car parks, and includes improvement of access to water, access to electricity, and taking care of garbage or the refuse collection and managing waste at the local level, supporting initiatives that come from young people, from women, and this is exactly what we have in our plant. At the upper level is how do we get into the modern issues. For instance, if you talk about waste, working with a company to be able to engage in renewable energy, and that waste become something productive that would not disturb people, but it can be used into energy or be used into some other waste product materials that can be useful to people. These are what we have, like you said, that I should summarize, this is what we have in our plant in terms of what the council is. And like I said, I'm not coming now as a new person, I've been there, but even in 2018, I would be proud to say I was the first candidate and first time probably as far as we know for a mayoral candidate or a local government official to develop a comprehensive manifesto of what you want to do when you were elected, working with your council. And these things are there. And we have our 10-point plan earlier on. And we are not bringing exactly the same thing, but we're looking at the things that are modern now and ensure that we include them.
I mean, someone watching will say these are things that already incumbent is doing. We have the Mbalit project. He's constructing markets. He's constructing, parks everywhere. Would you agree?
No, I would not. And I would no. The Mbalit project, like I said, we would give credit for that. But that's the only success story that they have. In the last 5 years, which market is constructed? None. They cannot tell you they're constructed. But they'll tell you they constructed a market. But if you, maybe in an interview you ask them which market did they construct, they wouldn't tell you. They don't have any market that they constructed. When we were there as a council, and I was, like I said, 2008 to 2012, we constructed the Yafa Tunjai market that they're talking about at Talinding, at Sika. And we constructed the Abuko market, the one that is just at the entrance of Abuko on the right side if you're coming into KM.
How about Latrikunda?
Yeah, I'll come in. We constructed the one at Old Josong behind the prison. The Latrikunda market was initiated in Yankubo College second term. And they started the construction. When I was coming back into this country in 2017, that market was already up there. It was already under construction at a high stage. So in 2018, when they took over, the market was already ongoing and the counterpart contribution was already paid because that was a GumWorks funded project. KMC put in their counterpart contribution just like they put in their counterpart contribution for the office that they're using. And these are projects that were started in 2016-17. And by the time they came in 2018, the counterpart contribution was paid. They might have paid a second counterpart contribution because the counterpart contribution are two. But to construct it, no, it wasn't them. It was Yankubo College time. And refuse collection is good. I'm not doubting that. But when we were there also, we had tractors. Anybody who lives in KM, remember that there were tractors that were going around collecting refuse for free. Now they have compactor trucks that they're charging people for the service. And that is the success story that they have. But not a school. Charles Jau High School. You live in Bundung, I guess. You know how Charles Jau. Yeah. Like Conte built Charles Jau Junior School. When we were there as a council, we built the Charles Jau High School. And that's why Charles Jau today is both a junior and a high school. And there are so many communities where we extended water, in Abuko, in Talinding, water extension, electricity extension, paying NAWEC. The council of those times used to pay electricity bills. All these street light bills that you see were paid by the council before. Today, they are not being paid by the council. So these are successes that we can look back and say, did we done this? But with a more revenue, with an increased revenue, that is not based on fiscal management, but based on an increased tax. Because you increase license in 2020, increase trade license, you increase the, how did I call this one? The rates, the normal duty that the women pay from 5 to 10. You increase subs from $500 to $1,000. And the subs that were paying $1,000, you increase it to $2,000. Trade license increased from $2,500 to $3,750. That is what has brought more revenue into the council. But what is the service? compared to the previous time.
It's interesting. Mr. Mboj, I'm being told time is up. I mean, it's quite interesting. But we hope to have the minister again, and so that we can discuss a lot as far as his bid for the mayoral election is concerned. There's a lot of issues that we will have really discussed, but because of time, I mean, we can. But then we'll solve it for another edition when we will have you back. Mr. Mboj, once again, thank you so much for being on the program. And Honorable Minister, thank you so much for coming on the program. Quite appreciate
Thank you. Welcome. And thank you for the invitation.
We hope to have you again. Well, viewers, with that, we bring an end to this week's edition of the State of Affairs program. I was your host, Alu Sise. Do join us next week. Until then, bye-bye.